Yeah,
All right, another episode of the podcast. This time with we're going outside of Freemasonry as I've done on a few occasions, but I am always excited about the chance to do so because I'm a firm believer that in any endeavor in life, there are a lot of opportunities and things that you can learn from other fields and then apply them to your field. And I think having myself gone through professional wrestling school at Can-Am, I got the shirt, and training and being trained by and learning a lot from this guest. He has a lot of advice and stuff he can talk about both for any aspiring professional wrestlers out there, and also I think, and as we'll discuss, I think a lot of Freemasons as well. So from Windsor, Ontario, Can-Am Wrestling School, Dan Pizzano, welcome.
Hi, Cam. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And you got the shirt, so should make sure to mention the giving name El Reverso.
Yes, as many people are aware, I wrestle as El Reverso. I was trained at the Can-Am Wrestling School, and wrestling has been tremendous to me and teaching me many assets. I'm glad that you brought up the many skills that are required to produce a wrestling promotion just in general, because that is definitely my experience in the wrestling industry. Is many skills are required. People wear many hats just to get things off the floor and running.
Without being able to know when the lockdowns will end, when the next wave will come and go, and kind of forces outside of our control, limiting our ability to put on shows, to wrestle in front of crowds, all that type of stuff. How have you kept yourself motivated, staying in shape, studying the wrestling business? Just how do you keep yourself motivated in such uncertainty?
Well, that's actually a really good question, Cam, because even the most motivated can lose motivation. And there can be certain aspects where you have to pull yourself out of a situation in which you never thought you could enter into. And I imagine with Freemasonry, you guys do gather quite often. So with us, like a contact sport and even a small gathering, a one-on-one, ability to practice your skills was outlawed, basically. So luckily for me, I was able to utilize the wrestling school. I was able to go in by myself and run ropes and kind of keep exercise going that way. But there was a point where the YMCA, the gym, closed, and that was a big stable rock for me in my wrestling career. It was somewhere where I was able to go where I could grow myself as an individual, not just as to get stronger, but they had a support system there where they actually believed in creating people that were better at what they did and helping them achieve their dreams. You know what I mean? There's a lot of support there. So unfortunately, when that closed, it was a huge hit to me. It was something where I didn't have the equipment or anything like that to work out on my own. And for a while, I was pretty depressed about it, especially because there was a lot of friends of mine there that I wasn't going to see now anymore. Right. So thankfully, through my support system, my parents and my girlfriend, they helped get me some workout stuff, and I was able to start going again at it and get it in a routine at home. And that's one of those things where I just had to make the time for myself. And thankfully, because of the other people that I had around me in a support system that cared, they were able there to help pull me out of a situation where even though it wasn't ideal, and a lot of people in my situation didn't have the same opportunities, didn't have access to a wrestling ring, didn't have support where they could get the weights or anything like that, didn't have the freedom where they could plan time to actually work out and exercise, maybe go out for a jog or anything like that. You know what I mean? Sometimes it takes support to help pull people out of a certain situation. Without that, some people do, you know what I mean, find themselves looking into whole different situations, having to reinvent themselves, having to renew. I can't tell you how many people already that I've talked to in the wrestling industry that are, saying that they don't imagine wrestling being in their life anymore. And they've had to reinvent and renew and try and find other ways to continue on their road.
Is the struggle, how much of the struggle do you think comes from the uncertainty kind of aspect of it all, right? It's one thing if on this day, wrestling in front of people comes back again, right? Or this day the gym opens again, versus constantly being like you're never sure what restrictions will lift when, that type of thing, right? And again, it's not anybody's fault. It's just that challenge of staying motivated when you don't have a particular end date by which you can say at this point, back in the ring type of thing.
Hmm. I can definitely, like, that is a huge challenge. And I find a lot of times with that situation, those emotions can be overwhelming. You know what I mean? It tends to be like a big situation where you're looking at it and it tends to be like a 12-foot wall that you're asked to climb. And you just think it's impossible. So instead of climbing that 12-foot wall, I found like easier for myself is just to set little goals, just to set little steps. So that way you're building yourself access over that 12-foot wall, right? Eventually over time, you do get there. It takes you a longer distance, but it starts where you just plan, okay, today I'm going to make sure maybe I'm just doing 20 push-ups and whatever else just to get back into the groove of like working out every day. So I'm just going to set this mental routine. And that's the first step, right? And just getting yourself into that mindset. And then you grow from there. And then you just make sure that you're hitting safe and accessible goals, something within reach, something that you're not overshooting. And then you continue to maintain and hit those goals. And then after a sustained period of hitting those goals, you realize that you're further than you've possibly come. And it's more encouraging to look back and see, oh, I've accomplished this already. I want to keep doing more.
And in terms of encouragement, or frustration, depending on your point of view, when you see, in the States especially, but I even remember, I think Japan in January of this year, I think at Wrestle Kingdom, you're seeing other jurisdictions, other countries putting on, live wrestling events, live sporting events, and doing so with fans in the crowd. And you're seeing the same thing with Freemasonry, most states south of the border, to my knowledge, have resumed in-person Masonic meetings, whereas in Canada we haven't yet. I guess, but when you see that happening for wrestling, does that give you a sense of encouragement that if it's happening there now, it'll happen here once we get the vaccines, or does it create frustration in the sense that I just want to do that, and why does Florida or whatever it is get fans and get to have shows again?
I would honestly say, I think like early on, there was a frustration just in general because there was so much promise just with everything that was rolling, but after so much time and so much reflection on just basically, like you said before, the lack of control, you know what I mean? Like there's an acceptance and just like, you can't get mad at the wind kind of thing. You have to, like I was saying with the small steps, you know what I mean? Just kind of focus on what you can control. That's been like a key aspect for like keeping a positive mindset for me, is just focus on what you can control. I do have friends and other like Kaito Kiyomiya. Actually, I have talked to him like pretty recently, and kind of asked about how things over there are in Japan, just to see like, if they're still training and everything, and just let them know that, everybody's okay here. And like, it's nice to be able to talk to other people that are actually over in those other situations to see how they're going, to see if they're struggling or not struggling. And, it's kind of amazing to see that, like, even though certain aspects, they are doing certain other things in the same other ways, they're not as well. And it seems like everybody is kind of struggling similarly with what's going on. And even though they might have certain things here, as you saw what happens in India, like India for a long time, they were having wrestling shows and things were very, very good. And then just very recently, they went through a big downturn in just public activity. They had to shut everything down for a little while themselves. And our good friend Bhupinder, you know what I mean? I talked to him as well, pretty obviously, and just find out what's going on there. Again, it's good to have friends that know people in other places and know what's going on, and to find out that, yeah, even though maybe it wasn't right now, there was a time frame when people were struggling and they're trying to deal with it, and everybody has to basically deal with the rulings from overhead. As soon as we maintain that plan and hit certain goals from our government's plan, like Doug Florid's plan for the certain vaccine rates, and like the 21 days and everything like that, we have to do what we have to do. And like I said about getting mad at the wind, I can't control anything about that. I just have to focus on myself and make sure I'm hitting my own goals. And then when we finally get the okay, we're hitting the ground running. Just like I imagine, just like with Freemasonry, when you guys get your ability to hold meetings and such like that. I'm sure you guys have already talked about how you're going to go about doing it, you know?
Having spent over a year not seeing each other in person, we are doing virtual meetings, virtual events, things of that nature. It does make it, it's there's such a, people talk about wrestling as in, a three-person dance, the wrestlers and the referee. There's a dance element to a Masonic meeting too, especially the opening and closing, because it's all call and response. It's a ceremony where there's set orders and set responses, and you can get into a rhythm with your officers. And when you don't have that for a year, you lose that rhythm with those around you. So it's one of those things where it's so important to keep practicing as much as you can. And like you said, focusing on what you can control. One of those things, right, is in the case of Freemasons, it's opening up your book and studying your ritual. In the case of a wrestler, it's, you've always got a floor, so there's always a chance for push-ups, for sit-ups, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and there's always tapes to be studied, and there's always other skills to be mastered. Like I was working on video editing over the pandemic and stuff that I could try and do to improve myself and become a better just overall product and market myself better, and I imagine that when you guys were talking about practicing your rituals and everything, that there are certain other people within Freemasonry that had certain ideas about, oh, this is how we do things. And I would imagine that that's a great outlet for you as well, as so many people within Freemasonry that you guys were able to, hey, I'll take this idea and maybe we can practice doing this, or maybe, we can still try doing something here like that. Like that's one of the things that I know that with the pandemic and wrestling in general, it helped communication between major companies that wouldn't normally talk. They started to talk about, okay, how can we continue doing things a little bit normally? Like Impact started to talk to WWE about what kind of stuff are you guys using to clean the ring after, to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe? And then there was the protocols. What kind of protocols are you guys doing to limit exposure and everything like that? So something that was unprecedented in the past, where because of the pandemic, now there's more communication between assets, and they're trying to figure out how they can maintain a certain level of normalcy.
If there is a silver lining to the shitstorm that is COVID, is it that it's forced, whether it be a professional wrestling company or any organization, Freemasonry, it's forced those industries and the people within those industries and organizations to reevaluate things, to try new things. I mean, would you, for example, have been working on video editing were it not for the last year and a bit?
Probably not. That's the thing. I probably would have kept focusing on more in-ring skills. And that's something that I've seen other wrestlers get options, and they've gotten opportunities because of other skills that weren't in the ring. Right. So it was something that not until I was able to reflect on it that I was able to see that, oh, okay, maybe this will help me in my overall skill set.
And yeah, I really like what you said about, it's about setting, don't try to climb the 12-foot wall, just set a goal that is, reachable and attainable. And then you set the next goal, whether that's 100 push-ups or, 2 hours of tape or whatever it might be. And same thing with, to all the brethren out there. Yes, it's frustrating in Ontario, especially. You don't know when you can go to lodge, but you can always grab your book and read a few pages a day and call a brother if you get stuck on a part or if you don't remember what a particular word means, right? There's always a phone. There's always a chance to connect with and learn from a brother. And even if ever there was a time to be calling up brethren who are in old age homes or anything like that, right? Now is kind of the time for that.
Oh, I would definitely and 100% agree. I mean, especially again in the wrestling industry with some of the veterans now, there's not really much going on. So I can imagine there's hundreds of veterans out there that are willing to talk a young professional's ear off. If you were ever to reach out now to ask for advice or to show someone some tape and say, hey, can you watch this old match? Let me know what you think. Like this would be the time to get that sort of academic exposure. So that's definitely and that's what, again, where wrestling mimics Freemasonry is the connections are so vital in the professional wrestling industry. I cannot overstate that enough. It's just that the more people and the more places and the more schools, the more opportunities you have, you know what I mean? The more you expose yourself to, the more educated you become, you know, and that's honestly paramount, is educating yourself. So.
At what point, you kind of touched on this a little bit with Freemasonry, but I think there's lessons there in the wrestling business that certainly yourself, you know, could speak to. Yeah, at what point in speaking especially from a student perspective, at what point does a student or a wrestler go from learning how to do the move set and the work properly to incorporating their own unique personality and I don't like the word character, gimmick, whatever it is, into, you know, into the move set? Because in Freemasonry, right, at first, when you're first starting out, really the emphasis is really on just these are the words you say, and you say them in this order. And the result is you can always tell a new Mason, because the way that they deliver their work tends to be very monotone and very just, you know, I say this word and I say this word. But as a Mason goes in his career, and certainly this was in my case, different lectures, different pieces of work mean different things to him, and you'll see, oh, he will, even though the words don't change, he will emphasize certain words differently, or he will incorporate different gestures or movements when he's speaking that other Masons don't. And it seems to me that's the same thing with professional wrestling, where the initial goal is just to be able to do things correctly. But you do see, as personalities develop, as gimmicks develop, you start to incorporate more and more of yourself and your gimmick into the move set. So I guess just from you know, myself, I'm still very new. You know, at what point do you see a switch from learning how to do the moves correctly to being able to add some of your own personality into those moves?
That's actually a very good question, Cam. And the very short answer is when you're able to perform the move to the point where it's muscle memory and you have to stop thinking about the steps of the move, then you can start to emphasize, how do I want to perform this move a little more? What Scott used to tell us all the time, and I'm sure as you're taught the rituals and stuff too, is you want to stick to the format of the move. You want to make sure that you're hitting all the safety points, because what your goal in there is to do in the ring is you want to take care of your opponent. If you're not doing the certain safety steps and the certain guidelines properly, then you might actually not be taking care of your opponent in that aspect. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain moves where you're making sure that you're cradling some part of the person's head, or, you know, you're putting somebody down safely. Like, even in amateur freestyle wrestling, if you pick up somebody and you drop them down in a violent nature without taking control of the body, you don't get the points for throwing them down unsafely. You do have to take care of your opponent, but you're making sure that you're exposing their shoulders to the mat, and that you're just showing access of skill as opposed to what they have, right? So what I would say in the ring, and I'm going to compare this actually to an actor, because I love this acting situation. I'm a huge Star Trek fan as well, is when you have to stop thinking about it, that's when you become a professional. So when you start just performing things in there and it comes second nature, and your mind starts to wander about, like, oh, this is what I'm going to do after, you know, you're not thinking about what you're doing in that moment. That's when I'd say that you've excelled in that situation, because people will tell you, you don't want to go outside of the book unless you have the confidence in what you're actually doing. And the example that I'm going to give, the Star Trek example here, is Christopher Plummer acted as Henry VIII famously right before William Shatner. And before William Shatner's appearance, Christopher Plummer went to the showing and he told a friend of his, oh, you know, as Henry VIII, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, you don't want to do this. Basically, everything William Shatner did. And after the show was done, the friend turned to Christopher Plummer and said, like, what did you think of that? And he goes, actually, to tell you the truth, I know I said all that stuff, but William Shatner is just so good at what he does. He pulled everything off. Even though I said, don't do it that way, his acting skill and his charisma and his confidence in himself meant that he was able to take certain leaps. And you might not land it. You might actually fall on your face, even though you're taking that risk. Like you might actually, the first person to try the double front flip into the senton in the ring might have actually landed on his neck and hurt himself. You never actually know. You know what I mean? But it takes that leap of faith and that courage in yourself and that confidence in yourself, that when you've worked your way up to that and you can repeat it without having to think about it, that's when you're able to expand on that notion.
It's funny that go completely off topic, the weird connection between Shakespeare and Star Trek, like Patrick Stewart is most famous of that, right? Like he was but William Shatner, I think most Star Trek actors probably been in at least a few Shakespeare productions over the years.
I would, yeah. Oh yeah. I would say that's, they look for those actors because they understand that it's, the show in general analyzes the human, situation, not just a certain aspect of a drama, mostly in general, especially the early ones, like The Next Generation, the original series, they try and analyze the human situation just in general, so they want experienced emotive actors.
So I've been lucky enough, through Can-Am to always have some terrific coaches, and every coach, I take different things from. I feel I'm going to start naming coaches, and if I forget one, I'm very sorry. Please don't beat the shit out of me, because I know you all could. Divine, Bolin, John, capital letter E, period, Bravo, Amazing Nate. Just so many, and Prince, obviously, just so many great veterans as well who come through. But the lesson that the main lesson I would say that I've taken so far from, especially Johnny Divine and Bravo, was breathing. And it seems like a weird thing. It's everybody assumes, and I assumed before I started wrestling school, that is you breathe, like it's the thing that you do. But I never realized until I started and I had both Divine or Bravo yelling at me to breathe, how easy it is to stop breathing when you become stressed or nervous. And sometimes that's related to physical exertion, but it doesn't always have to be. It can just be walking to the ring or whatever it is. And the nerves can affect your ability to breathe, to breathe on purpose. And that's something I took with me to Masonic lodges. I realized that when guys had an important piece of ritual to do, or even if it was their first time in a particularly important spot in the lodge, the term we use in wrestling is getting blown up. And I never realized till wrestling school, I would look, this guy over here is getting blown up. He's forgotten to breathe because he's so nervous about doing things right. And I've heard guys suggest yoga, different ways to, I find having somebody yell at you to breathe is a very good way to remember to breathe. But just in, as a veteran, as somebody who's helped me and many people at Can-Am, just the importance of breath and paying attention to that, both inside the ring and just in life, in any stressful situation, how easy it is to, lose your breath and kind of tricks that you have as a wrestler, as a performer to maintain your breathing.
Oh, well, I will agree with you that breathing definitely is very, very important. The more air you intake, the more oxygen gets to your muscles, the more oxygen gets to your brain. So if you stop breathing, you won't have as much strength in the ring. If your ritual requires any sort of hand-eye coordination, you're obviously going to lose as much function that way. And if you have to remember a certain amount for your ritual, then same thing with the match. If you have to remember a certain amount of the move sets or anything else like that, then the lack of oxygen means a lack of capability of remembering that instance. So to train yourself in order to be able to handle that situation, there's obviously, it's not just one certain way. There's a lot of wrestlers will tell you that there's wrestling cardio and then there's other cardio. To be a professional wrestler, there is no other kind of cardio like that. I'm sure that you're aware that when you hit the ropes, you have to exhale. When you take a bump, you have to exhale. When your back hits that mat, if you don't exhale just right, the wind gets knocked out of you and it hurts. But when you do it just right, it feels smooth. I would equate it to like hitting a home run in baseball, where you almost don't feel it. It's just comes so smooth off the bat, the ball, that when your back hits the mat and you exhale just the right way and you position yourself just the right way, it's a nice clean safe feeling, and and it helps you maintain that ability to keep going and move forward. Now, certain things that I do personally to help work on that is to put myself in situations where I am hitting the ropes and having to take bumps and such like that, where I'm putting myself in situations where, like right now, we don't have the ability to wrestle one-on-one. So we'll do some drills, like I'll do some up and over drills, or I'll do some drop down drills and such like that. And I'm making sure that I'm monitoring my breathing as I'm doing that. I'm actively thinking about it to make sure that I'm getting myself to that point that when I get back into the ring, I'm not actively thinking about my breathing. I want that to be a muscle memory aspect, that I'm focused on that. When I do this motion, I exhale, or when I take this fall, I exhale, and then honestly, something that's not as common is singing, believe it or not, for wrestling. You have to take breaths in between certain courses and everything else like that. So on the road, like if I'm in the car by myself, I'll sing here and there, and it helps me think about like where I have to breathe in a certain aspect. It helps practice like deep breath in a certain point, because that can be very important as well, is to make sure that you're taking a deep breath and going into a certain aspect, and then exhaling as you're exerting yourself. There's a lot of things to keep in mind as you're doing certain actions like that. And there's a lot of different ways that you can practice those, And I'd have to say that those are the certain physical aspects of practicing your breathing. Now, you also alluded to the mental aspect when you're talking about the nerves and everything else like that. Now, I imagine there's not much that you can do to practice a ritual beforehand, other than just going through the motions and trying to do it with some friends. Maybe you're going to do this thing later on. So what you can try and do is try and recreate that in a practice session. And that's what at Can-Am Wrestling School, what we try and do as well for the wrestlers, so that they don't freeze up there, because it's very easy to get up there and then all of a sudden you're going to wrestle. I know I've almost had it happen to myself, where you're going to wrestle someone you look up to very, very much, someone that you thought, oh my God, when I'm a kid, I'm never going to get that. But then you get in the ring with that person, or you think like, maybe I'm never going to get a chance to do that, but you actually do achieve that, So all of a sudden in that moment, you're soaking it in and you almost forget where you're at, because you're just absorbing everything else like that. Right. So in that moment and in that aspect, the best thing to do is just to try and bring yourself back down to earth and remember that you've been there before. Try and remember to yourself that if you have the ability, if it isn't your first time, to just try and go through, okay, this is where I've been. This is why I know because I'm sure you've heard of imposter syndrome. This is something that's not, just unique to wrestling, is every once in a while you can think, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? And that would be something where that would blow you up in the ring. If you're getting that imposter syndrome, all of a sudden you're starting to hyperventilate. You're thinking, what am I doing here? Like, these people are going to hate my match. You got to escape that mindset, because that's one of those things that's going to end up causing you to lose your breath very quickly before the bell even rings. So just maintaining that certain composure, that level of confidence, and making sure that you're practiced in a certain event. And like, that's one thing I'm going to say right now about Can-Am Wrestling School, that when we do get back into wrestling, we are working on a mid-level step where we're going to help people that maybe aren't exposed to wrestling on TV. A new aspect that we're going to have is we're going to expose them to wrestling on like YouTube, and get them familiar with wrestling in front of a camera, and have a mid-tier to not just being right on TV, to something where they can take steps and take chances, and then also take ownership of a character and expose themselves a little bit more to a wider audience. So, and then hopefully negate those tendencies to bring on the nerves during the match.
It's nerves are one of those things, right? And imposter syndrome, it's easy for it to sneak up on you. You can think everything's fine until you are through the curtain or in the ring, whatever it is. And that just goes back to what you were saying about the importance of using the opportunities that you have before those big moments to practice, to watch tapes, to do whatever it is, so that you can have as much confidence as possible when you're in that situation.
And then lean on those skills.
Yeah, it's funny how easy it is to forget that you have those skills in the moment. I've done it you can do it a million times correctly in training, and then you go out there and you suddenly feel like you've forgotten everything, and part of that is who you're with and relying on them to help you out, and part of it is, like you said, just leaning back on those skills, reminding yourself that no, you know how to do this, right? Nothing has actually changed just because now there's 100, 200, whatever, 5,000, whatever the number is. Nothing has actually changed in the ring. It's still, you and the other person.
Yes, exactly. Still four corners, unless you're in the old X division in the old TNA with the six-sided ring. It's still four corners, one referee, two guys. Same thing in the ritual. The rituals are done the same way. You know what I mean? I'm sure that people have to work their way up and practice and everything like that, and get to a certain point where they're able to perform those. So they have a background that they can rely on to say that I belong here. I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, and maybe that's the key, right? Is keeping things small, right? Especially at the start, right? Don't think about you're nervous or whatever it is. Don't think about the crowd. Don't think about it. Just think about the thing that you've done 1,000 times already, and let that muscle memory kind of take over.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Oh yeah, and like I don't know how true it is with the Freemasonry industry, but the wrestling industry, you know what I mean? It's a wheel that just continues to turn. It just continues to turn. And if you have the wrong mindset when you get onto this wheel, it can spit you out, throw you off, and never look back, and it completely forget about you altogether. But if you hop on this wheel and you're aware that I can use this wheel to gain skills, to better myself, and how can I achieve my goals as opposed to like achieving, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of people that have delusions of grandeur. They get on the I'm going to be, you know what I mean? And then they end up falling, you know what I mean? So as long as people can keep a realistic, you know what I mean? And small and like almost selfish expectation of what they can do coming into it, they can achieve very, very much a lot. You know what I mean? So it's just about also maintaining yourself as well as knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah, and even that. So I saw, that goes to a quote from Mick Foley. He came to Windsor. I know he's come to Windsor for wrestling related things, Border City Wrestling, but he came to Windsor for a comedy show when he was doing stand up at Comedy Pori. I remember, so I went to see him. I remember he mentioned, he said, don't let anybody define success for you. And what he meant by that, right, is that he had said, I main evented WrestleMania, and I consider that to be a success, but I'm also here in front of 50 people, maybe Comedy Pori could fit. And I consider this a success too, right? It's about, recognizing that, a successful moment where, even if you're wrestling in front of 50 people and, you make 5 people happy and have a better life because they saw your match and they're having a shitty day and now they're having a good day, right? That is success, and that, shouldn't be taken for granted.
Exactly. I always tell a lot of the students that when you're focused in there on trying to tell a story and basically not trying to relate yourself to other wrestlers, like you're never trying to compare yourself to another wrestler. What you're trying to relate yourself is to yourself. So, when you're in the ring and you're telling that story, if you've done better this time telling that story than you did the last time, then that's a success. You know what I mean? You've grown, you become better at your craft. It's a growth. So success, I always believe, and I always try and tell people, it's relative to, you know what I mean? Your own instinctive need. It's what you've done in the past, and your own success is relative to what you've done to what you want to do, So success, like very like to Mick Foley's situation, he's not going to main event WrestleMania for 40 years straight. But when he gets to, tell his story and he feels that he gets to expand on his career, that's a success for him relative to his situation. Yes, he had that amazing experience and now he gets to, relive it with others. So.
Yeah, I used to run, when I worked at the local jail, I ran a lot of programs. And when I was a probation officer, and I used to tell this story because I'm fond of it. I don't know if it's true or not, but I like to believe it's true because I think it's a good moral. It's about right, a lot of times, you're trying to convince the clients or the people, of the value of doing something well or good or kind, even if you don't necessarily see the benefits, or you don't feel like you're seeing the benefits, right? The example I always gave, or the story that I had heard, is that there was a woman who was going to go kill herself. She was going to jump off of a bridge, but to get to the bridge, she, had to walk by this bar, and it just so happened that it was uh, open mic night, or there was like a guitar. Anyways, there was somebody up there facing away from the window was playing her favorite song. Um, so she stopped, she listened to the song, and then she decided not to kill herself. Right? And I'm sure to the guy singing the song who never saw her, it was just like, this, here I am, Tuesday night. It's like there's three people in here, they're all drunk and playing for $25 or whatever it is, right? But he by being there at that time and by playing a song and presumably playing it well, right, he saved that girl's life.
All right. So James Doohan, one of my favorite stories, relating again back to Star Trek, is when he had a fan who had wrote to him and said that they were thinking of killing themselves as well. And that he's beside himself said, I can't live with that. Please, wrote back to this person, please come to this next convention. I promise I'll meet you there. I'll talk to you. You know what I mean? I'll sign something. I don't want to see you do this to yourself, kind of thing. Right. And over the course of a few years, he kept writing with this person and saying, oh, meet me at this convention. We're coming back to your town and everything. And after a certain amount of time, they came to talk to James and tell him that, thank you for doing this over the last few years. It's meant a lot to me. It's actually saved my life. I didn't think I had the courage to go on, but just coming to meet you at these conventions gave me strength to keep going in life. And now I'm at a point where I feel a lot stronger and I'm able to move on. So, those connections that people make, again, it's just showing how it's paramount. And that's something like even myself, one of my favorite stories that Jeffrey Scott told me about I spent 8 years away from the business. I had my own personal demons I had to deal with and everything. And I was gone for a long time. And when I came back to Windsor and I started wrestling as El Reverso again, I remember I wrestled in a battle royal. And when I came to the back, Jeffrey Scott he came back and he was laughing and he goes, "Hey, you believe this guy?" A fan just came up to me and says, who do we have under the El Reverso mask? And Jeff says to the guy, "It's the same guy. What do you think, is just that popular of a gimmick? We just had to bring it back for the show or something like that," right? And I just thought that was funny, but I couldn't believe that someone actually remembered me from 8 years. You know what I mean? It was a really long time. And I remember introducing myself to wrestlers again, to certain people that, I recognized, but wasn't sure that they recognized me. And they did. And I'd have to say that, like, it was a very humbling experience to feel that I did, like, make a difference, or I did put an impression on certain people and they did remember me. It was very, like, very moving for sure.
Who either now or, I think when you're a child, it's when these things more make the impression, which professional wrestlers either have made or, are currently making an impression on you, either they encourage you to get into the business or are motivating you to keep with it, even during these uncertain times?
Well, I can say that there's 4 specifically that motivated me when I was younger, and that's Owen Hart, Rey Mysterio, Ultimo Dragon, and Chris Jericho. Those 4 for me are the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. They made wrestling for the little guy, for the masked guy, you know what I mean? Something that was more palatable to the public. And it was something that I really enjoyed. And they were just pioneers. And I wanted to be just like them. And then I would say, coming back into the industry, Josh Alexander was someone that I definitely looked up to for stepping in. He was someone that, before he got signed by Impact, was the Ontario independent wrestling guy. He was it was a matter of when he's going to get signed, not if. So I held myself to that standard, where I looked up to Josh and said, I want to be just like that. I want to be that, Ontario independent wrestler. And it was something that I would say it's definitely a good motivation to hold yourself up to, like, someone, a peer that you look up to, because it motivates you, and at Border City, we have so many around us, you know what I mean? So many people with so many great stories. Joe Doring, you mentioned Aiden Prince earlier, you know what I mean? Like, such a rich history from within those walls that it motivates you to constantly to be better when you're a part of that. And I would say, you mentioned Nate Matson actually earlier. He's one of the reasons why I even came back after 8 years. I mean, he put up a post on Facebook saying, if you're a member of a wrestling school and you don't go and you live in that area, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It wasn't exactly like that, but I remember reading it and just thinking, like, as I was already working out and I was like, oh, should I go back? Should I not go back? And that post right there, it just put me right over the edge. Like, yeah, what am I doing? Like, I can't waste any more time. You know what I mean? Like, gotta be true to myself and get in there, kind of thing.
Yeah, all great examples, both past and present. Yeah, Josh Alexander is killing it right now over at Impact, like, or down in Impact Nashville. He's absolutely crushing it. It's
oh yeah,
X Division champ. He's had some amazing matches. Not that anybody at Impact Wrestling at all thinks to themselves, what would Cameron book? But I want to see Alexander Omega. What a match that would be. I think
that'd be fantastic. Oh yeah, I can think of a few where I would like to see Alexander versus, and I'm sure it would be tremendous.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, right? And you see it at Impact. He absolutely, he elevate, and not to say, certainly Impact Wrestling has a terrific roster of talent, but Alexander's one of those cats. When you see him in the ring, he just elevates whoever he's working with.
Oh yeah, and I don't know if anyone's a baseball fan out there, but if I can like relate him to a baseball player, I would say Joe DiMaggio, because I don't know if you've seen the pictures of Josh, but like, I know this to be true. The guy's always bruised. The guy's always got some sort of minor injury or this or that, or, you know what I mean? The guy he works so hard. He literally plays himself to the bone, just like Joe DiMaggio with the stories of he'd be black and blue, taking off his uniform. That's Josh in the dressing room, just black and blue, giving it his all out there in the ring, letting it all out there. To watch a Josh Alexander match, you don't get cheated ever, not once. So
you mentioned, I gotta give a shout out to Amazing Nate. The thing I loved about Nate, and I talked about different coaches leaving me with different things. The thing I loved about Nate is, he never. You could name any professional wrestler, and he would find the attribute that you should like take from them, right? Like, he never talks shit. So you could be like you could say my favorite wrestler is the Ultimate Warrior, and he'd say, okay, these are the things from the Ultimate Warrior that work for him that you should take. And then someone like me, right, my favorite wrestler is Bret Hart. He'd be like, this is what you take from Bret Hart. Like, he was always really good at recognizing the strengths of people, professional wrestlers, and then communicating those strengths, saying, this is what you emulate. Even, nowadays it seems like, on YouTube or whatever it is, like, if you love Bret Hart, you have to hate the Ultimate Warrior or something. Like, you can't. But Nate was the type of guy who every wrestler he sees their value and what they bring to the table and why they made it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that makes him a great coach, as he sees that in individuals, and he's so positive, and he's a consummate professional. Nate Matson, I'm glad we're getting to talk about him, because he's one of those people where you could pull a different list of veteran wrestlers, and he's probably wrestled that person. When you're talking about experience in a trade, if you have the ability to talk to Nate Matson about anything, I mean, he's the guy who's been through everything. You know what I mean? He's the top level Mason that has been there for 30 plus years. The one that you're achieving to aspire to be, that's Nate.
And such a humble guy too, right? Such a humble guy.
Oh yeah, you won't hear from him first. That like, I've been here, I've been there. You kind of have to pull it out of him. You know what I mean? You're like, really? Like, you did? Oh yeah, So yeah, I love Nate. I love him.
And since we're going down the list, then we might as well keep it going. I almost bought some flowers a few months back to send to Michigan when I found out that John Capillary Beard Bravo had been shot. I'm happy he is recovered though. Despite the fact that Scott D'Amore wanted to pull the plug at one point on him, he made it through. So well done to Bravo. That was close, but I'm very happy he survived that shooting because Canada wouldn't be the same without his presence.
Oh, it's true. I know. I was going through the C-can getting the casket ready, but then when Scott said he's okay, I just hucked the thing back in there. I was so happy to do that. Yeah, John is another one, consummate professional. When you talk about heart and soul of a building, that's definitely John. You know what I mean? I miss him so much. He's been gone for so long, like not being able to see him. You know what I mean? I can't wait till he can come back and see exactly what's going on in the school, how we're trying to breathe new life into it. And when we come back from the pandemic, we want to come back better and stronger and ever. We want to offer more things than we've ever offered before. We want to be able to really reach in a new territory and be the place to finish, start, or excel in professional wrestling.
I remember poor Bravo, because he has to, poor every coach should put up with me. But I remember I had this idea, and because I love it when Freemasons are represented in pop culture, and it's always fun when they're the villains. Like one of my favorite movies is From Hell, right? Which starred Johnny Depp, and in that movie, the Jack the Ripper's a Freemason, which he probably wasn't, but it's cool if he was. Makes it more fun. But I remember I was telling Bravo, I was like, I'll be a heel, and I'll be a Mason, and I won't give up the secrets. And I was like, no, that's stupid. Nobody cares. I was like, no, it's a great idea. And he's like, no, it's not. And I was like, oh, it is. I can do it. So he's like, fine. So he put me in a match, and he's like, okay, be the heel. And it was terrible. It was horrendous. And he's like, I told you, you idiot. It's the dumbest thing. What's wrong with you? Nobody wants a no-legged Mason heel. Nobody cares about your handshakes. But I was like, no, it can work. But so he had to sit through that terrible match. But he is a great guy and a great coach. So I'm glad you recovered. Glad that they didn't pull the plug.
Oh my gosh, dude. I mean, with John, he's one of those again. He's so bluntly honest, you know what I mean? But that's the thing, is when you need it. I have a funny story actually for you about John. One time I was down in Orlando, and I was learning about how they do the tapings and everything like that. I made the trip myself, and I was having the absolute worst time you could imagine. The absolute worst time. And like Congo Kong was there, and he was really nice to me. A lot of other wrestlers there. P. Williams was there. P. Williams actually was fantastic to me. He let me like vent a little bit and everything like that. So I really appreciate the people that were there for me. And John was there for me too, but John was there for me in a different way, because John was like, wow, you're an idiot. You're really letting this get to you. Wow, you think it could be worse than this. And like, he really came down on me in a time where I was at my lowest, and he tried to push me lower. But it was in a sense, like it was in a good natured sense. It's hard to describe, but it's just like, dude, you're really going to let this get you down? Like, seriously, you're better than this kind of thing. You know what I mean? And he was so bluntly obvious about it that at the time it hurts, but then you reflect on it and you're like, yeah, he was right, actually. Why was I letting this, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, man, and like John is he's great for that. Like, he sees it. And whereas Nate sees it and he has a way of cultivating it out of you, John sees it. Hey, come on, let's do it right now. You can do it. I know you can do it. I see it right now. You know what I mean? That's more John's approach. So, and some people need that, and they perform better with that. You know what I mean? John's tremendous at it. I love the guy.
Wow, this is kind of fun. Let's keep going down the list then. I was going in reverse chronological order to another John Boland. What a character he was. What a cool guy. Like he actually was like the first person to actually like do real shit with me. Like, he was the first. I think he was the first guy who ever gave me like body slam, like a suplex. Like, now plenty of guys have done it since, but he was the first guy who was like, all right, see what happens. Right. And then he'll probably land okay, I guess. I think, who was it? I think Scott was there, and Bowen just picked me up. Scott was like, didn't expect it to happen. Like, yeah, that's the thing I would think about Bowen. Like, he was the first guy who was like, all right, I'll suplex you, I'll do this or that. Like, no fear, but also like you felt, because he's so strong. Like, even after all the suplexes I've taken since, like, you feel so secure. You're like, this guy's gonna drop me well, because he had such a strength. That's the thing I would think about when I think about Boland, is like the first bunch of suplexes and hip tosses and stuff. Divine as well gave me some hip tosses, but Bolin was the first guy to like go all out with some of that stuff.
Oh, if we're gonna talk about John, I think that because like people that know John Bolin know like how built he is and how big he is. So I think that the first thing you wouldn't think of is how smart and educated in the wrestling industry and how he is. Like honestly, I've learned so much from John Bolin. For someone that came into the industry a little bit after me, but like I said, I was gone for 8 years, and in those 8 years, he's been in the backstage area in WWE with Cody Rhodes. He's been in Impact Wrestling as John Bolin and as other, like he's done so much within the wrestling industry. His wealth of knowledge, being there for the training camps and stuff like that for WWE in the Florida facility, you know what I mean? Like he's again just someone who's an immense wealth of knowledge, and he's someone who recognizes. I would say he's really good at recognizing will within an individual. You know what I mean? Because I think that being in the industry, as you can see, Cam, like it's not always size, strength. You know what I mean? Like the guy that you think would be the best talent isn't always the best talent. Sometimes there's a sheer willpower aspect to that, and that overcomes the lack of certain other abilities. You know, I guess like a good thing I can equate that to is to Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Nobody thought Tom Brady would be this, you know, greatest quarterback of all time, taken, you know, 199th overall, but he had the sheer willpower. He was able to outsmart people. He was able to bring people down to his level. He was willing to take other risks that other people may not have been able to take. And he was able to take care of himself for a long period of time. And he's been really, really successful, you know, but he was undervalued at a very early time in his life. And John was someone who could see people who might have been undervalued early on in their wrestling career and bring value out of them. So I would say, yeah, John is definitely someone who very educated, very, very, very smart guy in the wrestling industry.
Absolutely, yeah. And then since we're going backwards, I got to give a shout out to Johnny Devine, my very first coach, when I started, and he was great because he, there wasn't like any real, for a guy in a wheelchair, a guy with no legs, there wasn't like any real protocol for it at the start, right? I remember I came out once before I started training, just to meet everybody and like, shake the hands or whatever it is. And I see them doing, he was leading them in squats or whatever it was, right? And I'm thinking like, I don't know how I'm going to do squats. And I was like, I don't know, figure something out. And then I started doing the dips, right? Like with the two chairs at the corner. But yeah, Divine was a great coach. A great person to start with, because he was really good about like, you'll figure it out, right? And if you mess up, I remember because he's one of those guys who, it goes back to what we talked about before, right? Like he can be a very, very intimidating fellow if you mess up. But the benefit of that is that when you mess up later, make a mistake, say in front of a crowd or whatever it is, you're like, I can handle this, I can recover, right? You never have to worry. Because I remember, what was it? I was reffing, and he was, a heel, and he was choking a guy, and I was counting. And then he asked me, how long do I have as like a heel? And so like 5, and he's like, okay, so I'll go till 4, whatever it is. But I just froze because I wasn't expecting the question, and I had no idea how to respond. And then he started yelling at me, and he kept for a week after, he kept asking me the same, every time I'd be reffing, he'd be like, how much time do I got? But it's funny because it was like my second time coaching, and or my second time reffing, that I needed that coaching to be told, like, to remember, like, don't freeze. People might ask you questions like expecting, right? So you learn how to handle and work under pressure. You definitely know how to work under pressure with Divine. He was a great coach, and definitely, he was the first coach I had. So I always appreciated him letting me, be involved.
I'm actually glad for you that Divine was your first coach, to tell you the truth, because Divine, like with his personality, especially coming from the Heart Dungeon, you know what I mean? He was someone that didn't like excuses. If you were someone who made excuses why I can't do this, then right away, Johnny had no patience for you. You know what I mean? Especially like he loved you. I know, talking to Johnny personally, that you were someone that you always looked for a reason why you can achieve something. Where someone was counting you down, you always said, no, I can do this because of this, and this is why. And that's one of the things that Johnny loved about you the most. You know what I mean? So that you had to come into the school with, I'm so glad that you had that, because as you know firsthand, when Johnny loves you, you know what I mean? He loves you, man. Like I remember sacrificing so many nights early on in there with Divine before I moved out to Edmonton. And then he moved out to Edmonton and I was having problems finding a promotion, and he worked with Kurt Sorokin and PWA. And I remember I talked to a referee and I'm like, I'm one of Scott Demore's guys, this and that. Right. And the referee went downstairs and he talked to Kurt, and Johnny happened to overhear that, this is who's upstairs. So he's like, what? Oh man. And he tells that referee, bring him downstairs. Come on, tell him to come down here. And right away, that next show, I was working for Kurt Sorokin and PWA Wrestling, thanks to Johnny Divine. So, you know what I mean? He's just, he's a good man. He's got a good heart. You know what I mean? Very respectful individual, and someone that if you show him respect is very reciprocal with that.
And then, I'll never forget, one of my favorite wrestling stories is, I don't remember how, I was just uncoordinated, but it was at this, like, he drove in and I was in a key, so I'm waiting, right? And I go to shake his hand and somehow I shook his thumb. Like, it's the weirdest thing. And he looked at me and he was like, yelled, he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, shake a hand properly, like, you idiot. So he goes off of me and I'm sorry. And, Johnny Divine was very big on, like, you shake hands when you come in, you shake hands when you come out. So it's the end of and I have to go to shake his hand. And he puts his hand out and he's staring at me with the most intense stare. I had never been so nervous to shake somebody's hand before or since.
That's so funny. There's a few reasons for that. Like I said, he comes from the Hart family Dungeon. He's got a military background as well. So like I said, respect is given, respect is earned. That's how Divine operates. Very, very good man that way.
That was terrifying. That was terrifying. I was more scared shaking the hand than I was, like, doing the first 450. Like, I'd never been so nervous to do anything. But it was like, if I do this wrong, it's 500 push-ups. Like, I know it. And speaking of 450, then, I got to throw in kind of the last main coach I had before the shutdown was Prince. He's the one who taught me the 450. I'll never do it as well as him, obviously, because he crushes it every time. But he taught me how to do that. Also, if you look at the start of this podcast, he designed the logo. He does a lot of design work. He designed, like, posters. But yeah, he was the one who taught me the 450 and did a lot of work with me. Probably more work one-on-one with me than anybody else. Part of it because we had a smaller class size, but I think he really was the one-on-one guy with me a lot just before we had the shutdown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say Prince is a good guy. I'm glad that you had him, because one of his strengths is his belief in people. He's, you know what I mean? He's got this unshatterable belief that people have the ability to, you know what I mean? That they have this innate ability within them, So he's always going to believe in someone that comes to them and says, I think I can do this. He's that person to be like, I believe you can do this, and here we're gonna do it together. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about there, where someone that comes to him with passion, he reciprocates that passion. He can be so passionate in the ring, and he can be so driven sometimes. He was a great instructor when we had him there before the pandemic. It was a good time, and like you said, it was just a small class. You know what I mean? So it was unfortunate for him that things worked out, like, and with the pandemic and everything the way that it did. But yeah, like, I'm sure, like, it was good having him around and being there and doing that for sure. Definitely.
Then speaking of instruction, right? You're never quote unquote my official coach, but the thing I enjoyed about working with you is you really helped me a lot with the amateur side of things, and the amateur wrestling, which whatever I'm doing, even if I'm I shouldn't say even, I'm very honored to be a referee and to have ref matches, but knowing that, having that amateur background, it's so helpful to understand the mechanics of how those guys are moving in there, right? Because I think so often with the way wrestling is presented, it's easy for fans to forget that, at the core of this, it is wrestling. It's an amateur sport first and foremost.
It's
Yes, now we have all the top ropes, we have this and we have that, we have 619s or cam 19s, but still it's about taking the leg and driving the guy down, right? And
Mhm.
you really, and speaking of one-on-one, right, you helped me out a lot with that aspect of the game. And even it's funny because people, El Reverso, Lucha Libre, you never forget or would let other people forget that what's at the core of this is the hip toss, is the headlock, is the single leg or the double leg. It's that first, and then these other things.
That's something I'm definitely going to attribute to one of my first trainers, and that's Joe Legend. The guy was fantastic in the professional wrestling industry. If you're going to look into his past, you would look into Red Shirt Security and TNA Wrestling. I would say that's like his most approachable library. It's like if you were to go into the Impact Plus and go back into the annals of that history there. He's just someone who harped very much on the fundamentals. And if you didn't know what a headlock felt like, he slapped the headlock on you and said, try and get it off. If you didn't know what a certain move felt like, because that was one of the things that, like you said, it's at the very basic of it. We're trying to translate to the fans that this is a contest and you're trying to win a contest. And I'm trying to put this person into a hold because I'm trying to get him to win. Every hold I put on means I want to win with this hold. Every time I slam the guy to the mat, I expect to win with that slam. And if I don't, then I should, you know what I mean? There should be some sort of recourse to that, right? So Joe Legend was one of the most grounding and one of the most fundamental teachers that I've ever had. And I think actually, were you at that one class when you got to teach the seminar at Can-Am?
I've been to two of his seminars, yeah.
Yes. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. I had an entire year with Joe Legend. So thankfully, I'm able to retain those lessons that I was taught and maintain those basics. I was an amateur wrestler in high school for 4 years, so I'm able to translate that into the ring as well. I feel that with my background, my experience, my exposure to so many different things that I do feel pretty qualified now to do this at Can-Am Wrestling School. And I'm very fortunate to take over after like all the names of the people that we've mentioned before. To be in that list is honoring and humbling. It's amazing, to tell you the truth.
And this one more person I should mention. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch too, and this connects to Freemasonry. So lodges have to be set up a certain way, and I think but you like when it comes to professional wrestling, you kind of know, but I think a large part of you in your mind is like the ring is just there. It just teleports itself, and then like there it is, right? And even if you understand a little bit, until you're involved in the backstage of it all, you really don't understand just how much goes into even if it is like a paid show, not televised, whatever it is. Even that, so much goes into it. And then when you're talking about television and pay-per-view, the amount of behind the scenes that needs to go into it is insane. And every, whether it be Impact crew, Border City Wrestling crew, students before at St. Clair College, did an amazing job at all of that stuff that never gets the recognition. But got to give a shout out. He's a terrific wrestler as well, but to Lightbulb.
Yeah. Oh my! People don't know how much he sacrifices for those Border City shows. He is literally the unsung hero and the MVP of every single Impact taping in Windsor and every single Border City show in Windsor. It's literally Matt.
And yeah, he's dear God. It was actually this show, I believe, March Breakdown. That was the first show I was involved in as a student still, right? So it was the setting up and all that stuff. And you are disabused very quickly of the idea that it's a simple process. And I can only imagine how not simple it would have been if not for Lightbulb there. Like, it is just a ton of work, and all the students work very hard on it. But he did a great job organizing everything.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I attended that show with my dad and with my brother. And that's when I told them that I want to go back into wrestling, that I had been talking to Scott, and that, I bought the tickets and we were sitting in the crowd, and I was like, oh, okay, so, I think this is what I'm going to do. I've already, and so again, the support structure that I have, I got full support, full, you know what I mean? It was really nice. But that it's amazing that you mentioned that March breakdown show, particularly being a first for you, as it was for me as well. That's amazing.
Oh, now, one person I'm not going to say anything nice about. You can if you want to. You called him our friend, but if I do recall, he decided to try to kick me once upon a time just for me calling a match properly. Boo Pinder, which me and Petey Williams decided to, you can't be messing with the referee. You lost fair and square, Boo Pinder. It was 1, 2, 3. But having said that, I can admit, despite the fact that he's a sore loser, that he, is, in awesome shape, trains very hard, and, again, sore loser aside, coming from India and then having everything shut down, like he's gone through a lot, and I know that he's still training, still keeping in shape. So, credit on him for that.
But Bhupinder is that star athlete. He is Andrew Luck, Cam Newton. He's Trevor Lawrence. He's the guy that was meant to be there his whole life. He's got all the skills, all the attributes. You know what I mean? He's wrestling Rhino in his 11th match ever. He's wrestling D'Lo Brown, Petey Williams. You know what I mean? And he gets upset, and it didn't sit very well. It's like the guy, you know what I mean? He's been the MVP his entire career, and he gets to the NFL, and all of a sudden he's not performing like he's used to. And that frustration isn't something that he's ever had to deal with before. So on a professional stage, it sort of boiled over a little bit. And I apologize that you were the brunt end of that, Cam. And I hope in the future things aren't so I hope things aren't so heated between the two of you.
Well, we'll see. But I will admit, and I think anybody just looking at him, anybody would have to admit, he is an athlete, and he takes the craft seriously.
Oh, and the other thing too is I will say he has all the tools necessary to succeed. He's got determination, dedication. He's got the right mindset. He's constantly positive. He's a hard worker. Like all the attributes that you say, oh, like this is what makes Aaron Rodgers a great quarterback, or this is what makes Tom Brady a great, like any athlete. This is what makes them great. Bhupinder has those attributes, so that's something I can definitely say with 100% like confidence. Is he's a specimen, skilled individual, and he's got a long future in this industry.
So speaking of the future of the industry, we're here in Ontario. Wrestling's coming back. We know it is. We just don't know when. So it's just a matter of waiting. Just like Freemasonry, all the Masons getting impatient, myself included. Like it's coming back. Get vaccinated. Do all that jazz. It'll help it come back quicker. But if you want to look at, we've already talked about Impact. You've been on Impact TV. The future of Impact. You've got Omega as a champion. You've got this partnership with AEW, with New Japan, with Finjuice. Like you've got all of these national and international partnerships developing. Just anecdotally, what I'm seeing on my YouTube feed is way more, whether it be cultaholic, whether it be wall culture, like way more focus and press on Impact Wrestling. Where do you see the future of, I suppose, either the wrestling industry in general or, Impact Wrestling and with these partnerships?
Well, I think wrestling is very healthy moving forward. I definitely think that we're in a good position. In Southern Ontario, we are seeming to be some of the last places to be coming back into like a normal routine. But it's like we were talking about it being encouraging that other things are coming back around, and just you kind of have to focus and stay true to what's going on with that. I think that like with the future that we see is we have to we have to just maintain like what we can. Like there's Super Kick that's going without fans right now, and they have that ability that even when the stay-at-home order was going on, they have a small group of people where these people are quarantined with themselves. You know what I mean? Kind of like the Big Brother situation, where they're allowed to maintain a certain level of practice, just like what they were doing down in Florida in the WWE facility. You know what I mean? In the Performance Center. You know, I see that being the future of how we come back. Is we have like a studio representation. We have a small outdoor fair type show, because especially during the summer here, this is when we're starting to open up. I see things returning somewhat to normal in about September. And I think that we are coming out of that hibernation period where wrestling and the independent market has just been null and void. And now we're starting to see little things where there's hope on the horizon. Little aspirations are starting to pop up. Bookings are starting to develop. And myself, with my involvement in the Can-Am Wrestling School, like I said, we want to expose our students to as much experience and as much as we can. So we're going to be bringing in a YouTube show where we're going to be doing stuff studio, small, cast. Basically, it's not going to be a very big thing, but we want to take that first step forward into coming back and then expand from there. Hopefully we can expand into a more performance driven and then also character driven. And then we have a wide range of experience and a wide range of assets for our students to be able to utilize.
And like that, brings up a good question, kind of on which to go out. Although I'm sure there could be a crazy long answer to this question. You talk about students, making sure students utilize the right thing, and you're somebody I've come to for advice over the years. So we can either keep it in the realm of wrestling or just in general. If somebody's looking to embark on something that is going to be a challenge, what advice would you have for them in terms of, the investments they need to make, the effort they need to put into it, and just what advice would you have for somebody embarking on a challenging journey?
Geez, what I always tell people coming into the wrestling school, the first thing that I say to them is professional wrestling is going to be the hardest thing that you're ever going to challenge yourself to do. But upon completing it, and upon going home at the end of the day, once you've exposed yourself to it and you've gone through it, you'll know that you can achieve anything. That once you've completed it, you'll know that after challenging yourself and getting through it, you'll know that you can achieve what you set your mind to. So just like in any other aspect and any other goal that people would set out for themselves, I would say that, like I was saying with the small steps, just make sure that you challenge yourself at least a little bit. Make sure that you're out there challenging yourself, that maybe once in a while you don't know if you're going to achieve this, but you set out to actually see if it's possible. And then upon challenging yourself, and maybe you don't always, hit that mark, maybe you miss just a little bit, but in mistakes, we find lessons. That's very important, is that in making our mistakes, we expose ourselves to certain lessons that we would not have learned if we didn't make those mistakes. You know what I mean? And so once in a while, challenging ourselves and not being afraid to make mistakes can be the most beneficial thing that we've ever, had to accomplish. And my uncle, he told me actually a long time ago, before I got into professional wrestling, my grandfather passed away, and he was a very big influence in mine. And actually, there was a camp for the Can-Am Wrestling School where I missed the camp because I attended his funeral. And my uncle told me that some of my last words, what my grandfather said was, back when I was young, I didn't have any money, and I had the health to go and do things, but I didn't do it because I thought I couldn't afford it. And now that I'm old, I have money, but I don't have the health, and I can't do the things that I wanted to do with the money when I was younger. So now I'm kind of in a catch-22. I wish I would have gone out and done those things. And I if I could say anything, it would be, don't live with regrets, is what he told him. He told my uncle, make sure you're not living your life with regrets. So that would be something that I would say is, if you're thinking about challenging yourself and you know that you're going to regret not challenging yourself, then you have to take that chance. Because taking the chance and failing will ultimately be less hurtful than not taking the chance and regretting it forever.
That is very good advice. Also, a piece of advice I would give everybody is, if you can ever do it in person, and we will be able to do so again, you ever hear about an El Reverso appearing, go check it out, because his matches are awesome. Speaking of like third person, you are an awesome wrestler / your alter ego character gimmick. El Reverso is an awesome wrestler. We mentioned Josh Alexander, you had just a fuck of a match with Josh Alexander. Or was it Last Man Standing match? Isn't it on YouTube? It's a very cool match. I think I saw it. It's still on YouTube, right? Like, you can track it down if you search for it.
It is still on YouTube. It's one of the matches that I'm the most proud of. And actually, I can say that I took it back to Windsor and I was like, Scott, you should take a look at this. You know, like, I think me and Josh did really good. And I don't know if that influenced them very much. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But it was a couple weeks after that match, Josh got signed by Impact Wrestling. So, but I would say, if you're telling people to watch that, yes, it's one of the matches that I'm the most proud of. And I was just talking about my grandfather. I had my family over to watch it on YouTube, my entire family. And that was something that my aunt said to me, because my grandfather used to watch wrestling with them when they were a kid. And my dad used to watch wrestling with me when I was a kid. My aunt told me that my grandfather would be proud of me. And I don't think that there's another more, like, I don't think there's anything better that anyone could say to me. And that's because of wrestling. You know what I mean? I achieved that because of wrestling. So.
Oh, that power bomb you took with the hand. Oh, I still cringe, just because you got the neck, right? So you were able to protect your head, but still, when I think of taking a bump, right, I think get the hands out, and your hands are just stuck there. Oh, I cringe just thinking about it. But it was a great match. So check it out on YouTube. If you, whether you're a fan of wrestling or you don't usually watch it, check out that match, because it's a cool match and might make you a fan. Who knows?
I hope I do. Thank you very much, Cam. I appreciate it very much.
And with that, I'm getting pretty good about mentioning this stuff. Like, subscribe, comment, give me money on Patreon. If you are a Mason and you're watching this, like I said, I hope that some of the advice coming from Reverso, that you guys take it to heart, because what he says is absolutely true. You know, him and myself, we've been without wrestling now for a year and a bit. Year and 3 months. But we're still finding ways as best we can to keep our skills up, keep our skills sharp, because it is coming back eventually. And it's just about, and it really, the last year and a half really has been a test of inner motivation, I think, more than anything. And just how motivated can you be to keep up with your work? Because we are coming back, and the last thing you want to do is, have forgotten the basics and be rusty. We're all going to be rusty, but don't be more rusty than you need to be.
Exactly. Maybe we fell off the wheel, but don't forget it exists altogether, kind of thing.